Thank you all for joining us this evening for our talk about saving waste and water. Fantastic. So it's brought to you jointly between Habitats and Heritage and English Heritage at Marble Hill. I'm Fran, I'm from Habitats and Heritage, what was Environment Trust. I am the Nature Conservation Manager and I'm going to be acting as your host today. I'm now going to pass over to the English Heritage team to introduce themselves.
My name is Rachel Morrison and I'm the Audience Development Manager at Marble Hill, helping with the Marble Hill Revive project.
Hi, my name's Harriet Parry. I'm a PhD student that's currently on a placement at Marble Hill and I've been helping with the research on this presentation.
Hi everyone, my name's Maureen Coyle. I work for English Heritage and I'm the property manager at Marble Hill House and Park.
Hi, my name's Kate Slack and I'm the head gardener at Marble Hill Park.
Hi, I'm Kiara. I'm a student at St. Mary's University in Twickenham and I'm interning with Habitats and Heritage.
And I'm Stephen James from Habitats and Heritage and I'm starting off the presentation.
So I'm just going to start sharing the screen now.
Thank you, Fran, and welcome everybody. So saving waste and water, saving water and waste is our title. And we go to the next one. So we're actually attempting something quite big in just half an hour or 40 minutes, because this presentation is going to be about issues that are of global importance to do with waste and water, but also they're very local. So we're really bringing it very close to home, and in particular to Marble Hill, our local area. And as well as that, we're looking at present day issues, because a lot of these things are affecting our lives today. And we're looking back at history, at some of the roots of the issues and how they've arisen. So we're going to look at some issues of sea transport and luxury goods and current issues of that, and plastics, which is obviously a modern issue, food waste, consumption and packaging, and then water use and waste, and the Thames, which is our big local resource. And we're going to end with looking more broadly at what is our impact at the end of the history, at the present day, and then some time for questions. So it's very big and broad, and please bear with us. Just to begin with, just a few words about ourselves as Habitats and Heritage. We've got really three main strands to the work. One is about conserving nature, everything from litter picking by the Thames and doing all kinds of wonderful work in green spaces, planting trees and so on. Looking after heritage buildings, such as Grove Gardens Chapel that we see there, and Kilmorey Mausoleum, where we've had a lot of involvement. And a third strand is the main focus really of this evening, about sustainability and looking after the environment. Next.
And we're delighted to be working with the Habitats and Heritage team, is because Marble Hill is being revived. It will be open for 5 days a week for free, our beautiful house. It will be reinterpreted, and there will be a host of things for people to get involved in, using all of their sensories. So we're so looking forward to it being open, and that will be open in April and spring 2022. Our landscape is being invested in and being improved, ensuring that it is biosecure and that it is true to the heritage. And the person who is leading that is our wonderful Kate Slack, who you're going to hear a little bit more from later. She's joined by a whole host of amazing garden volunteers that have enlivened the life of Marble Hill. Not only do we have garden volunteers, but events and admin teams that bring a whole load of wonderful talents to the site. We're going to see that our sports provisions are improved for the community. And that's everything from improving the drainage on the pitches to ensuring that there's a fully accessible sports facility for changing, for female facilities as well as male facilities, hurrah! And lots of, and the ability for people to use it however able-bodied they are. A much improved cafe you're going to hear a little bit more about in this presentation, but that will be open in spring next year. And there's a whole raft of jobs that we're creating as part of this £6 million investment within our community. But we are really pleased to provide a whole range of free events, so do look out for all the exciting things that are coming up, and we're really pleased to be working with the Habitats and Heritage team to share about the importance of the environment and share about saving water and waste as part of this lecture today.
Okay, and as Rachel said, we've worked together for several years. We're delighted to be here. These are examples of working together in times which were happier in the sense that we could meet in big crowds in Marble Hill Park. Obviously, that's not possible at the moment. We've missed it hugely this year, but we are able to do this. And so here we are. And I think we'll move on now to the main topic. I'm going to hand over to Kira to tell us a bit about marine ecology and sea transport.
So what is marine ecology? It's the scientific study of organisms living and dependent on the oceans. This includes marine life and humans. Some negative effects that we see today in the oceans and seas is temperature change, which can cause coral bleaching, which is when the water gets too warm. Corals expel the algae living in their tissues, causing the coral to turn completely white, which is their skeleton. They're not considered dead at this point, but if warming waters do continue, then there is no point of reviving. We also have fish nets and cargo from cargo ships that can cause, fall into the ocean, causing harm to the sea life and pollution, and also causing oil spills. And next slide.
Thank you, Kira. And following on from the use of ships to transport cargo, we know that Henrietta Howard, who built Marble Hill, surrounded herself with beautiful things from overseas. She had hand-painted Chinese wallpaper in her dining room, and you can see the image on the screen on the left of what the wallpaper may have looked like. In the 18th century, all overseas goods had to be brought into the country by ships, which would have included exotic building materials such as mahogany, which was prized by craftsmen for its durability and workability, and it was excellent for crafting cabinets and furniture. As part of the Marble Hill Revive project, we are actually using the mahogany staircase as a starting point to investigate and communicate its links to the slave plantations in Central America where the wood was felled. The mahogany itself was transported by sea from Central America, and if the journey went smoothly, and depending on the size of the ship, it would have taken between 21 and 29 days to sail from coast to coast. Henrietta also collected shells and coral, which Kira just spoke about, from tropical seas that she used to adorn her grotto in the grounds of Marble Hill. Grotto decorating was seen as a polite occupation for women at the time, and inspired by Alexander Pope and his love for interesting sparkly rocks, mirrors and coral, we know that Henrietta and her great niece helped to create the grotto herself. In Pope's grotto in Twickenham, you can still see some of the stone from the Giant's Causeway, which is embedded within the site. And at our own grotto in Marble Hill, we're going to be doing some more investigations, some archaeological excavations next summer, which we hope to explore much more, and we'll be able to share those findings shortly.
Fascinating. Okay, we're on to our first quiz question for the audience. We'll be talking about plastics coming right up to date. I ask you to tell us what proportion of plastic is exported from the UK. Now, the most recent year for which we have figures is 2018. Is it about a quarter, or about a third, or as much as 1/2, or even as much as 2/3? You may know, or you may want to guess. Please click one answer and then click submit. And in a few seconds, when you've had a chance to think about that and submit your answers, we will have a look, and I should say a tiny bit before handing back to Kira to tell us more. How are we doing? Okay. Well, nobody thought that it was a quarter, and that's quite right. And in fact, about half the people thought that we export as much as 2/3 of plastic, and that is absolutely correct. It is about 64%, which was 611,000 tons. And a lot of it used to go to China, who banned imports from the UK, and Indonesia, where increasing numbers of countries are banning it. But even in 2019, we were exporting plastic to some to France and to Spain, which is amazing. And we do have problems with the stagnation of recycling in the UK. There was a great improvement in recycling rates, but it has been tailing off in recent years. But I'll hand over to Kira to say a bit more about this.
So plastic pollution can cause long-term harm, which can include a physical impact on marine life, can also have a chemical impact, such as like PCBs and DDT. There's also the transport of invasive species and pollutants from polluted rivers to remote areas in the ocean. And there's also an economic impact. In the UK, plastic waste makes up 80% of all marine debris, from surface waters to deep sea sediments. The main source of marine plastics are land-based, from urban and storm runoff, sewer overflows, inadequate waste disposal and management, industrial activities, and illegal dumping. Over 5 million tons of plastic is consumed in the UK, and only 1/4 is recycled. An example of single-use plastics are water bottles, soda cans, toothbrushes, takeaway containers, and straws. For microplastics, they are single-use plastics that have degraded over decades and can be harmful to animals digesting them and humans from drinking water through the chemicals and the dosage of it. What new living ways of storing up problems for future generations? We can help with our water management, waste management, and consumerism. Next slide. Waste export. So waste export in the UK, 64% of waste was exported to countries with less waste infrastructure. For example, like Stephen said, China or Indonesia. Currently, there is a poor data because recycling is currently measured at the point of that the processor or exporter takes control of the material. This does not include the quality or actual recyclability of the material. There currently is a low supply and demand. And to be efficient, there needs to be a backup plan due to high cost of failure, which the UK will need to be able to process their own waste. And there also needs to be data improvements, such as the net zero export goal and kickstarting the recycled content market. For emissions, this can include greenhouse gases, burning coal, oil, and gas, and even deforestation. A local example would be Heathrow emissions. While the UK economy has reduced its carbon emissions by 37% since 1990, CO2 from international aviation has increased by about 130%. And then also another example in older housing, the uptake of energy efficiency measures such as loft and wall insulation should be increased, and upgrades and repairs to homes should include the increasing of uptake of cooling measures, shading and ventilation, and to reduce indoor moisture with heat pumps and improved air quality and water efficiency. Next slide.
Okay. Oh, we have another quiz question. we're going to talk a bit about food and food waste. The question is, what percentage of food waste in the UK comes from households? That is not from retail or hospitality or manufacture, which produce huge quantities, I imagine. Are we talking about 30%, 50%, 70%, 90% actually coming from the houses that we all live in? Choose a percentage. You may know the answer to this. I have to confess I didn't before I designed this question, so this has been an education for me. And people are saying, obviously, more than half of the people here have said that 70% of food waste comes from household, which is absolutely correct. And really, what that percentage shows is that although we're each producing only a little bit, and if we think of our own production of food waste, you say, well, it's only a tiny bit, but of course people, individual households, make up the vast proportion of the source, so that adds up to the biggest percentage. And I think back to Kira to say a bit about food waste.
So each year, 4.5 million tons of food is wasted, which is worth 14 billion pounds. Right now, 55% of food in the UK is from the UK. And the average UK household spends around a little bit over £3,000 on groceries and £1,500 on restaurants and takeaways each year. As a result, in 2019, UK households spent 16% of their budgets on food and on alcoholic drinks. And then according to EPA, just the Environmental Protection Agency, they said food and food packaging materials make up almost half of all the municipal solid waste, and packaging now is almost always single-use plastics. Each form of packaging uses a lot of resources like energy, water, chemicals, and fibers to produce, and its manufacture often generates air emissions, including greenhouse gases, heavy metals, and particulates, as well as wastewater and or sludge containing toxic contaminants. Next slide.
Okay, so I'm just going to tell you a bit about the kitchen garden, which we have at Marble Hill Park. This was a project which was built by the Environment Trust, who are now Heritage and Habitats. It's still running, and we have a few plots for local people to be able to grow their own vegetables, and these are available for people who don't have their own gardens. So it allows people to be able to grow their own vegetables even if they don't have a garden. But we also are growing vegetables and fruit for the new cafe, which is going to mean that the cafe will be using vegetables and fruit which have 0 air miles, which is quite a big impact really on saving air miles in the cafe. We're also trying to move towards a no-dig system, which is a really good way, if you're growing vegetables, of saving water. So by using the no-dig system, you'll end up using less water because basically you're mulching the surface of the soil. In traditional methods for growing vegetables, we used to turn it over every year, but now we're beginning to realize more and more this is just disturbing the structure of the soil, but also allows the soil to dry out. So by using a no-dig system, putting mulch on top, it means it keeps the moisture in the soil, but also it saves you back, because digging is very, very hard work, especially for your back. So that's one of the things that we're trying to move towards, which will help us save water. We're trying to move towards away from using any kind of plastic. So we've gradually moved away from using those little plastic labels, which just appear everywhere and they only get used once. So we're moving toward using wooden labels, which are just as effective and also the compostable. All of our waste we compost on site, all of our kitchen garden waste, it all gets composted and put back into the soil, which is another way of, again, of reducing waste and also reducing the use of water. And another thing that which we do in the kitchen garden is we don't use any peat-based compost. So peat that is used in the horticultural industry basically is destroying peat boglands in other countries, and these are very fragile ecosystems. So by choosing to not use peat-based compost, you really are doing quite a big thing to help the environment. So we're moving towards that. And there's lots of things you can do in your own gardens as well to reduce watering, reduce plastic waste, and just compost your own waste from your kitchens. And it's a little bit that everybody can do to help reduce waste and reduce waste of water. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Kate. Kate mentioned our new cafe, which is located in the Coach House Cafe, and that's going to be opening in spring next year, spring 2021. And across all of our sites with a catering offer, our ambition is to reconnect local food producers and the food seasons with visitors to our tea rooms and cafes. That's across all of our English heritage sites. We wish consumers to understand the benefits and enjoyment of eating food that comes from a known local source and is healthy, tasty and enjoyable. And at the same time, we want to see producers and growers rewarded for producing quality food whilst also protecting and enhancing the countryside. So as an organisation, we're phasing out the use of single-use plastics in our cafes in 2021. We have pledged that our cafes will be free of single-use plastics and throwaway plastic bottles by 2022. We're well on our way. We have just one plastic water bottle still within our offer, and we're working with the supplier to find a more sustainable offer for this, which is good news. We're also in the process of replacing all disposable food and drink packaging with fully degradable and made from recycled and plant-based materials. And we're working with suppliers to introduce reusable and biodegradable hot drink cups available from our cafes, and this will include Marble Hill. A lot of those disposable cups are made from a plastic on the inside. So it'll be great news to see the back of those disposable cups. We also provide free drinking water as standard, and this helps reduce the need for those single-use plastics. Again, as an organisation, we've developed a food ethos policy that keeps sustainability, animal welfare, and environmentally positive choices at its core. If possible, and if it meets the correct quality and welfare controls, food will be sourced seasonally and locally, and its provenance and distinctive character shared and celebrated with its customers. And as Kate mentioned, this is really going to be at the heart of our cafe at Marble Hill. It includes the fruit, vegetables and salad from our allotments in our kitchen garden. And also we have beehives on site, so we will be able to use the honey from our beehives. And really, we want to encourage the production methods that enhance wildlife and the countryside. And as ever, we will compost any food waste and recycle as much as we can when the cafe opens.
Okay, so water usage in the UK. A single household in the UK uses about 149 liters of water a day. Appliances usually determine the monthly cost of this because a bath takes up 80 liters of water, whereas a dishwasher can use up 25 liters of water. The Thames water manages sewage sludge, creates smarter water catchments, and has a Thames Grow program. They also have a drainage and wastewater management plan to help combat climate change and sustainability. And then how can we help conserve in our own homes? We have through kitchens, like Don't drain leftovers or throw liquids, fats, oils, or grease in the drain. You should try to throw away in the bin or recycle as much as possible. And in the bathrooms, don't flush anything down the toilets besides toilet paper, and use biodegradable or flushable products that do not use plastics. Okay, next slide.
Okay, we're going to talk a bit about the Thames because it's well, it's a hugely important water resource. And we're starting with another quiz question. Complete this quotation. Poverty and a kind of food, as we've been talking about, always seem to go together, says a character in Dickens's Pickwick Papers. What kind of food was linked with poverty that comes from the Thames? Was it salmon, oysters, eels, or prawns? You may know, or you may wish to guess. Have a guess and then submit. Or shall I have a look? I have to say they all look reasonable answers. Okay, three-quarters, nobody thought salmon, nobody thought prawns, three-quarters of people thought oysters, and some people thought eels, which are both good guesses. The answer is actually oysters, and it's said by a character in Pickwick Papers, but the others aren't too bad guesses. Pickwick Papers was published in 1836, but salmon were really absent from 1833, weren't seen again until the 1970s. Eels remain common, so that's a pretty good guess as well. And prawns are possible. They tend to be from the estuary, but they have been seen up as far as Battersea. And food from the Thames is not really viable today, but the Thames is much cleaner. Can we go to the slide? So this is really the link back to history and water, because without the Thames, London wouldn't be here at all. Twickenham was hugely fashionable and popular in the 18th century, as were many places along the Thames, and there were great houses and palaces, and the Thames was described as a string of pearls because of the great houses. And it was also it has always been hugely important economically. In the 16th century, there was a survey of London where there were 2,000 wherries, small boats taking cargo and passengers were counted, and employing 3,000 people, which in those days of a much smaller population was a huge number. And trade doubled in the first part of the 18th century and doubled again in the later part of the 18th century, and the population grew through that century. It doubled from 500,000, 600,000, nearly doubled, up to 1 million. And then by the beginning of the 20th century, the population of London was 6.5 million. And the impact on the Thames is absolutely huge. You may have heard of the Great Stink of 1858, when the Thames became so polluted with sewage that the Houses of Parliament were unable to sit, and legislation was brought in and public health measures, and locally to us, the great Kempton works of the New River Company were established in 1897. So all these issues of public health and pollution were very much alive in the 19th century and are today as well. And it's massively important as a source of water. I mean, we've heard from Kate about the kitchen garden in Marble Hill Park. The whole area was really a patchwork of market gardens, and depending on the Thames and other rivers and the tributaries for irrigation. So it's very important ecologically for wildlife. We think of the Thames as a river and a river as a river, but it is actually a huge variety of different kinds of habitats for various wildlife. There are mud flats, there are islands, flood meadows, shingle beaches, and the South London clays and gravels. And that preserving those wildlife habitats is a big issue for the river today, as is restoring the tributaries. And locally, we've got a lot of work that nature conservationists do on the Crane, the Hogs Mill, and the River Brent. And just as in the 18th century, so today we've got big population growth, and the issues of the quantity of water is big, as well as the quality. And we've heard about plastic pollution, and that is a massive problem in the Thames, particularly with wet wipes that may be advertised as unflushable but aren't, and are very polluting. So all of these issues of pollution are alive today in a different form. And so the river really stretches through history, carrying with itself a lot of the environmental impact issues that we see both in history and today.
Thank you, Stephen. But as Stephen said, you know, Marble Hill was, with its location and its slightly raised vista nestled on the banks of the River Thames, was not only chosen for its beautiful views or its close proximity to Henrietta's friends, with Walpole or Pope being her confidants. It was also that principal way of transporting things and goods that Stephen talked about. And unlike today, a regular occurrence was the Thames freezing. And we've actually got some pictures of people ice skating on the River Thames from the 60s. So it's much more recent than we think. But in the time of Henrietta, she enjoyed the River Thames freezing for a totally different reason. The Thames would freeze and her servants would break up the ice, drag it along the driveway and place it within the ice house, which still is there today. It was the best way to keep your perishables fresh. And in some of Pope's writings, he talks about drinking lots of the provisions that Henrietta had within her ice house. So it was not just for food, but it was also for wine and lovely things that would be used for lots of parties, which Marble Hill was well known for. The ice house is essentially a large brick-lined pit with a small dome over the top, which was then covered in earth to insulate the cool interior. And at the bottom, there is a pit for the drainage of the melted ice. And we're lucky enough in Marble Hill to still have one of these ice houses. And this week, it was opened up by the archaeological team from Historic England. And actually being able to see inside, you just have a real awe for the level of craftsmanship that went in to create something like this with such amazing engineering. And if you'd like to learn more, we're going to, Historic England are supporting us with some Zoom lectures over the next few months. So do see if you can get onto those free resources. But the reason why we are doing the archaeology on this particular site is that we're going to be restoring an ice house seat in the space that Henrietta would have had it, so that as she enjoyed the vista looking down to the River Thames, we hope that the community will be able to do exactly the same in the future. But Maureen talked about Henrietta's love of the exotic, her fashionable tastes of the time, and how that influenced her spending for her interiors and exteriors of the Marble Hill site. And although we can never truly know how a Georgian consumer might have considered their impact of their actions for their interiors or exteriors, we can think about the ongoing impacts that were created by the Georgians, growing their capability to trade and procure goods from all over the world, and actually how it continues today. We are the first generation who really cannot say we didn't know. We're the first generation who really can't say we don't know how our spending impacts on our world. And we really are the first generation who really cannot say we don't know about our consumerism and how that impacts our world. the decisions of the past seem to be made according to the beauty or rarity or the value, rather than who or what had suffered to provide these prized goods. And if they'd known what was to come, would they have altered their behaviours? I guess that's a question for us all today. But today we've got much more information than Henrietta would have had, or any of the Georgians. And we know about the effects of our consumer choices on people's lives and the environment. And whereas in Henrietta's time, she would have thought that nature's bounty was perceived as a limitless gift from God, and some were more deserving of that bounty than others. But we know differently, perhaps today, that consumers ultimately hold the power to change the most negative of impacts that continue to change the environment that we rely and live on. And looking at our history can offer a window into how we can learn from and discuss which we want to take forward, because we are that first generation who cannot say we did not know how our actions impacted our world. Thank you.
Okay, so climate change is a really important issue in today's world, and it is the long-term alteration of temperature and typical weather patterns in a place. It can cause extreme weather like hurricanes and flooding, or even global warming, which causes rising sea levels. Humans are increasingly influencing the climate and the Earth's temperature by burning fossil fuels, cutting down rainforests, and farming livestock. This adds enormous amounts of greenhouse gases to those naturally occurring in the atmosphere, which is increasing greenhouse effect and global warming. This ultimately affects the oceans and seas because the ocean absorbs most of the greenhouse gases, causing global warming, which creates rising sea temperatures. This can also affect for marine ecosystems, coral bleaching, and effect on biodiversity. And then for humans, it can threaten food security, increase diseases, and cause more extreme weather and loss of coastal protection. What can we do to help locally? If everyone made small changes, it is better than fewer people making bigger changes. The UK does not particularly feel the impact of climate change as much as other countries, but this does not mean it is happening here locally. Local behavior equals a global impact. Next slide.
So thank you so much, everyone, for being here and for talking about these big issues in a short space of time. And we look forward to be able to share about some similar issues that crop up as part of our heritage exploration of Henrietta's world and what we can do together. And so it's a delight to work with the Habitats and Heritage team to share about these findings and to explore our understanding a little bit more. Both of us are charities, and particularly at this time, we would love you if you had a spare penny to support our work. For English Heritage, it costs over £200,000 per year to keep the park open and indeed the house. So we would love your support. And the Habitats and Heritage team doing an amazing job locally to support our heritage and the habitats around them by working with the community. So thank you very much for your time today. And I know if you've got any questions that Fran will be able to field those to the correct people. Thank you for your time.
Fantastic. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen now. Thank you to all of our speakers today. So we've got some questions that came in throughout the session. If you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat. So I've got one for you, Kate, here from Jenny, and she asks, how do you dispose of materials you can't compost or dead hedge? For example, diseased materials, honey fungus, pathogens, etc. Do you burn?
Well, diseased material you can burn. Another way which you can do is for things like bindweed root, you can actually put them in a black bin bag, and basically it will compost itself after sort of quite a few months. But it's a good way of getting rid of pernicious weeds and roots. If you don't want to burn it, you can basically, it will rot down, but you don't want it to rot down in the compost because it will just spread. So you'll be spreading it otherwise. But anything that's diseased, you really do need to burn because it will basically spread in your garden. So that's really, yeah, the only way to get rid of them.
Yeah. Any other questions at all? Please do pop them in the chat. Whether it's directly about what we've just chatted about or a question relating more to specifics, please do pop them in there. We do love to hear from you. Okay. Do you have bonfires? Are they allowed on site? Probably another one back for you, Kate.
No, we don't have bonfires. Not allowed on site. So you do have to be very careful if you're having bonfires in your own gardens. The regulations, different councils have different regulations, and you just need to be sensitive to your neighbours, but we don't have them on site at Marble Hill Park.
And then another point, just to add on bonfires, make sure you're checking for animals and creatures, especially at this time, making sure you're checking them thoroughly, because that's a huge hazard to them. So if you are having a bonfire, please do be wary and aware of things like hedgehogs love to nestle inside. They think you've made them a fantastic habitat which they want to go and hibernate in, so please do give them a thorough check. Do you know of any local English heritage properties with water collection systems? That's probably a good one for you, Maureen.
I don't know of any locally. I would say the nearest one we have would be at Down House. They have quite a good system there. It's the home of Charles Darwin. But our nearest other English heritage site would be Chiswick House, and I'm not aware of anything that they have there, but I think at Down House they do.
Thank you. What's a water collection facility? Very good question. I don't know if anyone wants to take that, or I'm happy to take that. Do you want to take that, Maureen, as you answered the first one?
So it's just a system of retaining their rainwater so that we can reuse it on site.
Sometimes called water butts, you might have heard of. Fantastic. Yeah, so thank you all for joining this evening and spending your evening with us. And yes, do get in touch if you have any other questions. We do love to hear from you. And have a lovely rest of your evening. Thank you very much. And another point from Rachel just before we go.
Just a minor plug to, if you want to find out any more about any more of the archaeology, please do go to our events on the English Heritage Marble Hill site, and you can sign up to any of those Zoom sessions all about the archaeology and what they found on site. Sorry, Fran, thank you.
No, fantastic, thank you. Brilliant. Well, have a lovely evening all, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.